Hey y'all, welcome back to Love, Sweat, and Tears, Ingredients for Transformative Campus Leadership. This week's episode is a little bit different, kind of outside of our usual format. Today we're talking about a passion project from Responsive Learning. I brought in 3 guests. We have Tommy Tinajero, our CEO at RL, and then 2 incredible folks that I can't wait for you to hear from. You've met them already on the podcast. We have John Hinds and Marty Silverman. They've been administrators for a long time. They'll tell you more about that in this episode. And if you really want to know more and you haven't had a chance to listen to their podcast episode yet, please go back and listen. They were so fantastic when they came that we had to bring them back for more and just kind of share with you this kind of secret we've been keeping for a while. We're developing a whole school leadership academy for administrators because we've seen the burden that administrators have right now. We've seen the disconnect, the need for community, for peers, for mentors, and we had to do something to help. And so we'll talk a lot about that today. I cannot wait for you guys to listen. Enjoy. All right, y'all. Tommy, John, and Marty, you guys have all been on this podcast before, so our listeners would be a little bit familiar with you. But before we dive in too much, I want you to just give me a real short synopsis of what you've done in education, where you've done it, and why you've done it. Tommy, you want to go first?
Oh, I guess, sure. So my name's Tommy Tinajero. I'm the CEO of Responsive Learning. I got into this business from an invitation from a former superintendent, Kay Carr, who's the president of the company, and joined them. And I my job was to just get things going, make things happen. So this was back in 2007 or 8, I believe. So it's been a long time, and along the journey, I have met some really fantastic people, and just so glad to be part of the work, the important work that we're all doing.
All right, John, tell us a little bit about yourself real quick.
Hey, I'm a retired principal for roughly 17 and a half years. Retired right before lockdown. Privileged to be at 3 different schools, all completely different in the makeup of the school, and really had some great mentors along the way. Got in with Responsive Learning maybe a year ago, maybe 2, something like that, and have been excited about creating content for new and existing administrators.
Awesome. And Marty, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I am a recently retired after 40-year career in Texas Public Ed, 33 years of that in administration, mostly here in San Antonio, taught for 3 years in Houston, though when I first moved here from New York back 40 years ago. I had the opportunity to meet Tommy, fortunately, this past summer at TEPSA, when he was my tech support as I was getting ready to do a presentation, and I've been happy to be connected to Responsive Learning as well. Same and with you, Beth, as well.
Yeah.
Well, I got wrangled into that. I was just walking by, saying hi to Jerry Spillman, who's also they're a customer and friends with Marty, and they said, "Hey, by the way, this mic isn't working. Can you help?"
Maybe.
Right place at the right time.
I know, for real. Yeah. Okay, so I want to just share with our listeners this project of the School Leadership Academy that you guys have all been very instrumental in thinking about and talking through and making sure that it's really fantastic, rich resource for administrators. I'd love to hear a little bit about the story of how all of this got started. So Tommy, if you can kind of share with us the very early stages and then how you brought John and Marty into the fold.
Sure. Well, so we have been known as a PD company for a long time. We're in over 400 school districts in Texas and, over 1,000 across the U.S. And about 4 years ago, I started looking at some research on the effectiveness of PD,
Mm-hmm.
and just how effective how does PD make a difference in the classroom? And it turns out it doesn't really do that
Yeah.
well. I mean, I think the numbers are around 30% actually makes a difference in the classroom. And so that started our journey in thinking of, well, I started to I thought, well, is that true with RPD? Is that the same thing with RPD? And so that started our journey on moving beyond PD and thinking this through. So we created a product called PD to Practice that helps guides teachers through not just PD, but all the way through application. There's coaching and collaboration, and there's all kinds of. It basically is like it kind of takes PLCs and puts them on steroids to make things happen and report back to administrators. It's a really great program. And that's what we started there. And then, we're partners with TEPSA, and every year we have a really nice dinner with their executive committee, and we always ask questions to find out what's going on in the industry. And we started to learn that there are a lot of new principals coming into the fold. I mean, just with there's a lot exiting, and they're being replaced by very young and sometimes not very experienced administrators, and they're just kind of you know swimming out there. I mean, they're thrown into the deep end in a lot of ways. And so we started this journey of thinking through how can we help. And after a lot of research, we kind of boiled it down to they need, there's PD that they need. They're training on skills and things that they can be doing in their schools. But then also they needed to be connected. It's being isolated was a big problem. They're kind of on an island on their own, and they needed connection. So we were thinking we created the Learning Academy, or the School Leader Academy, to include peer networking and collaboration, to once they learn, to deepen their learning, and then to start planning on application. But then there's this other piece that's really important, and it's hard to do sometimes, is to connect them with experts, right? Master level administrators like John and Marty that have been there, done that. They know how to navigate a lot of these issues. They know how to set things up. And so those are the three main components of the leadership program. So what happened was initially we started just building PD for leaders, and that's when I met John at TEPSA. And we've had a really, we've had a lot of really great conversations, become a friend of mine. And, we're both very passionate about helping schools and students. And the best way to do that is with teachers and with administrators, right? So we've been really passionate in just talking about those things and planning. And then I serendipitously met Marty, and and just started kind of building this team of people who are like them, who can really inform us. And so part of that process, kind of the way we do business is we always meet with these people to find out what is needed. And so we just started a process of doing that. And that's how I think when I introduced Marty and John, we had we hired some consultants, these 4 people, to come together to help us think things through. And we invited John. John brought on one of his people, Alicia, and then I brought Marty in, and another guy, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
And we just started diving in, trying to figure out exactly what needs to happen.
So y'all tell me about some of those very early conversations, trying to identify the gaps that we could help administrators kind of get
Marty?
over.
Yeah, well,
John, you want to jump in?
when we started the conversation, it was, okay, there are different levels of expertise when you become a principal. If you had a solid foundation as an assistant principal and had great mentors, you're probably more prepared than someone who's been an assistant principal for 2 years and you got the job. And so we realized we needed to differentiate what type of training we were going to offer and design content around. And with Marty and mine and Mike's experience, it's like, okay, so Now we've got to get really detailed and customized training for different types of administrators. And I personally believe a confident leader makes better decisions. And so, if we could create some good content that would sort of feel like someone's coming up right beside you, like, no problem, I got you. Let's just walk through this topic, whether it be communication or culture or um, supervising. We got it. We're going to walk you through these steps. We'll give you time to think about it, reflect where you are, what kind of plan you need to get where you want to be, and really get to a point where you're confident in that area. Then we could provide a great service for these new people coming in. And so, from my perspective, this is a great opportunity for those school districts who don't have an enormous central office to help on all of these topics. They can come to responsive learning and have just about any topic uh, addressed so that they can gain confidence through just being informed. Marty?
Marty, do you have, yeah, what was that like for you as you kind of
Well,
stepped into
and
this
you know,
thing all of a sudden?
the only thing I'd add to that is that the way content is delivered now is different than what used to be. I think there
Okay.
used to be, and when I say used to be, I'm talking about like when I started being a principal 30 years ago, there was some room and some time to connect with people in a more casual, personal way. But I feel like because things have progressed to the point where a new principal, a new assistant principal has to be great right out of the chute. There's not a whole lot of opportunity to learn through a bunch of mistakes that are preventable. That just the benefit of having the delivery like this online and at somebody's preferred time and available time, because we want people to also be able to live their life with their at their school and with their families, and to be able to kind of carve out some time. I think that is one of the biggest benefits and the most important ways that we can help serve new leaders.
Mm. So, what were some of the next steps as you guys kind of decided, yes, this is something we really need to do? This would be a huge benefit. What were the next steps of kind of designing this system in a way that would function well for crazy busy school leaders?
In the initial conversations, we, there's a couple of things that came into play. One is we wanted the idea that we wanted to build content and connection and networking and support. Like the support, the continuous support is one of the major reasons why PD doesn't work. Whether it's with teachers or administrators, if they don't have support, Marty talked about in the past there being more time for personal connection and development and engagement, and that's all very important when you're working in a large organization. And so especially when you're trying to add something new to your skill set and apply it, right? So you need those people that you can talk to and say, how did you do this? And you get to engage with each other. So when that's not happening, we had to be real purposeful about doing that. So the big piece was trying to make sure that whatever we do, we needed to build in support. But the second thing was the content, the topics had to, number one, when principals and these leaders are hired, the district already provides different, there's already topics that they want to push through. But what are the ones that they don't push through? What are the ones that are left beyond? I think Dr. Kennedy, from a former deputy soup from Isleta, was saying that a lot of times, as her job was to help um, middle school principals develop. And a lot of times they just assume that they had a lot of these skills. And then after 8 months, they realize that they don't. And to recover from that is very hard to do at that point. So we were trying to think, how can we be really intentional from the very beginning? And so the topics that we covered in our system, I like to think of it as right on time, like right on time topics, which means that when they need it is not the moment they need it a little bit before, so that they can wrestle with it, talk about it, work it, so that when they actually need it, they're skilled at it. So, an example would be, when does a principal need to have a really good speech, or I will call it a stump speech, um, before teachers. I mean, they need a stump speech for teachers. They need one for the students. They need one for parents. They need one for just the group. And so, when do you develop that? Well, you don't do it when the teachers are on they're in the classroom. They started. You needed to do it in July or even before that. So that's kind of what we do, is we build those systems, and that was kind of at the early part of our development when we were putting it together. But John and Marty, what else? What else was in your mind at that time when we
Well,
first started?
one of the things that you just hit on that I think is important is that, one of the traditional models of doing PD, especially for teachers and admin as well, is we front load everything. We teach everything important all at once at the beginning of the year, and sometimes that's not when you need that information. Sometimes you need to do what needs to be done first, and get good at what needs to be done first, and then a little bit later start wrestling with a topic that is, and you gave a good example, and I'll give another one. When do you start doing surveys and getting information from people? You don't need to know that deeply in July. You need to know that deeply starting, around mid-year. So it's knowing when something is going to be important and kind of highlighting it at that time
Yeah.
to make it,
And,
relevant and
well, I
alive
like the
right when
Yeah,
you
piece
need
in
it.
addition to
sure.
that, the just in time of cycling topics through, because you're not just going to watch a course and I got it, we're good. No, it's like we're going to cycle that back in about 3 months so that you can learn a
Yeah.
little bit deeper on that topic. So it seems like, well, what we've done is we've really thought through, if I were a brand new or a level two or whatever administrator, what would I need when and how would I need it? And that's what we've really tried to be purposeful about in this whole project.
What are some things, John and Marty, especially, that in the middle of this have just made you really excited to dive in and spend so much of your time and energy on this project? As you're having these discussions, and these light bulbs are going off, what are the kinds of things that are exciting you about this?
Well, I can tell you right off, when I started being a principal, I would have loved to have had this support and this type of development, and I didn't. And John, I'm sure you didn't either. It's so gratifying that it's a process that's been thought out by practitioners, not necessarily just university people who haven't been in a field for a long time, but people who have been working on this, or people who are, have been in the field recently and kind of know what it is like right now. And so I think that to me is probably one of the strongest parts of this that makes me excited to keep working with it.
Working with secondary principals, because I'm an elementary guy, right? Always been elementary. But working with secondary principals, rarely do I find one who will say, I don't know much about that, because they get thrown into these big campuses. They're like mayors of these small cities, and they're just expected to know how to do things. And rarely have I met one. I love everyone that I work with, but I've never, like, rarely found one that says, hey, I need help in this area. And so if we can set up these great modules for not only secondary, but principals who may be in an environment that it's not okay, it's not safe, it's not the thing to do to ask for training in certain areas, it's like, fine, we got you. Just, go home, watch a module, you'll learn a little bit more, and then rinse and repeat. And then what Tommy has done is added in that support, the coaching piece. It's like, okay, we're going to help a lot of principals in this new wave of principals get their feet underneath them and get some confidence right off the bat. Like Marty said, right out of the chute, you got to start making decisions. I mean, that's just the job. And if you can front load some of this before you have to make some of those critical decisions, it's just gonna save some heartache.
Tommy, what about you? As you kind of, you know, dove straight into this, what are some things that continually excite you about this project we're getting to work on?
Well, I mean, personally, I just love meeting great people. I mean, this journey has been incredible. I mean, people like John and
Yeah.
Marty and others. I mean, just incredible. I think one of the things that really kicked for me was that helped me to just get really excited about this starting the journey was that we found some research that was that showed that, and I always knew it was easy to make the connection between student achievement and a teacher, right? That's easy. But then when I saw that the impact that a principal has on student achievement is the same, it's right at that same level that a teacher would, I thought, man, we need to help school leaders, right? And then the other thing that I got excited about is that as we were interviewing and talking to a lot of people at the TEPSA conference and other places, we also learned that school districts, as much as they try, a lot of them just have a hard time not just providing support and training to existing APs and principals, but they're really not doing. There's a need to build a bench of leaders that are still in the classroom but aspire to be a principal, and start preparing them then so that when they land on the job, they come in with a lot more confidence and skills and connection, right? So that was the other thing. And then as we were working with this, all these amazing people, the structure just started to roll out. So the framework of the training is built on, oh, I hear some echo. Not sure what happened. Let me see if I can. Oh, I can't do that. So anyway, I don't hear it anymore, but that's okay. So the framework is really built on just-on-time topics, right? So the training. Then every one of those courses, there's this thing that we call a virtual peer network. So it's a virtual, and the whole thing can be done virtually, right? So it's nice that people don't have to come off the campus, go somewhere. They can stay on the campus. Campus is safer. All of that is really, important to keep in mind. But so after an online session happens, then there are virtual peer network sessions where there's a collection of people, a group of people that are in that same position that are meeting with the coach to discuss the topic and dive deeper into it and start planning and talking about what I can apply in our schools, right? So and they get to interact with each other. The most important thing is that there's a peer networking that happens. So somebody on there can reach out to another person and say, hey, I liked what you said. Can we talk about it? And that sort of thing. There's a connection like that. And then the after that, there's probably about one topic or one project a month that has to do with that topic. And those groups are much smaller. It's also virtual, and it's led by people like John and Marty, these experts. And they guide them through a project of planning the project, thinking about how they're going to measure the impact, things like that. And then they get time to go apply it, and then they come back again to share their data, share their experience and how things went. So that's like a project. And then the last thing is mentoring. So the mentoring is, everything is really kind of driven by the topic except the mentoring. We make people available, we make these experts available to all of our participants to call them at any time or to schedule a meeting with them to talk about any topic. So it's kind of again, it's like that right on time topic that may not be um, something that we're covering. It could be that a teacher or a principal has a parent. Maybe something happened on their campus where the parent is really upset, called the superintendent, everything is just going haywire, and that principal doesn't know what to do. So they can call a person and just jump on a schedule a call with John or Marty or one of the others and say, can you tell me what's the best way to do this? What can I do? How do I protect the student? How do I protect, the school and the teacher? And, just go through those topics. So those are just right on time, like something, a hot topic. And that really gets me excited because that's, again, it goes back to without support, you can have a fantastic presenter with talking about something that is amazing, but without support, it doesn't equal in, and it doesn't result in some change. But you can have like a mediocre conversation with somebody with support, and that will make a bigger impact. And so we're trying to get the really amazing stuff and the support together to make a big difference. So that's really kind of exciting to me.
Talk to me about some of the benefits of having this virtual peer network outside of your district.
Yeah, that's a huge thing, Beth. I was thinking about that while Tommy was speaking. It's sometimes, the person you need to reflect with, vent with, process with is, for lack of a better word, it's safer if that person is not somebody who's a colleague of yours that works with you. You may feel more comfortable and confident speaking about an issue, maybe one of your own shortcomings, with somebody who is not right next to you. And that is, I think, a huge piece of this project for sure.
Well, I think, to add to that, in large districts, you have meetings built in where you're going to go to a monthly title meeting and then monthly principals meeting, and so you have those opportunities to talk to people. But in smaller districts, you just don't. And this would be huge for the smaller districts who have one elementary campus and one secondary campus. They don't have anyone to talk to. They don't have anyone to say, have a conversation like, oh, I'm in the ballpark or I'm not in the ballpark. And, even in the larger districts, you need someone outside of your district to talk to at times. You just do.
Talk to me about, maybe not, without giving too much away, but about those projects. I can hear some principals saying, I don't need another thing to do. And I know that we've worked very hard to make sure that the projects are things that principals already have to get done, but rather than having to do it on their own, they have
Right.
a network to kind of form those things with. So can you guys give me some of the examples of the projects that you're really excited to get to work with these principals on?
Yeah, before we get on that, I think I just want to highlight, and John and Marty can talk about the projects, or I can talk whatever, but the one thing you said is really important. It's every part of this is not something more to do. It's actually, you have to do it anyway, but you get to do it with really great presenters and trainers and experts. And then you get to do it in a community of people and support, right? So that's really the important thing. So you have to do it anyway, but let's just do it together, right? So that's, I think, I wanted to highlight that because a lot of times they're already so busy, and you think about how busy people get in any position, and if they're really busy, how much of what they need to do is really making an impact. And so in this situation, because of the support, what they do, these important projects that we're working on, will actually have a better shot at making a difference, right, for the students especially. So anyway, do you guys want to talk about a project? Or I can talk about one. I would. So I'll just throw some out. One of them is creating your stump speech. Another one is assessing school systems. John, you can talk about that one. That's a really, like, getting a principal needs to start looking at the systems and processes in a school. There's another one has to do with school culture and doing an assessment, engaging your stakeholders to do an assessment um, of your school culture. There's one that has to do with engaging effectively, supporting your teachers through PLCs. There's another one that has to do with how to identify teachers' specific professional development needs and then meeting those needs. So those are kind of throwing in a couple of topics that are probably really important. So John and Marty, you can chew on those a little bit.
Yeah. Do y'all have a specific favorite or something that you're really excited to kind of dive in with your principals on?
Well, before being specific, I want to be general
Okay.
again here, just for a
Yeah,
moment.
sure.
And I think the importance of this can't be emphasized too much. And that is one of the things in my practice that I found was there were things that I just, quote, knew how to do after a certain number of years. There was maybe something that the district, asked, and an example is, at one time we had to do every year a presentation called State of the School in the district that I happen to be in. And so when you had been around a long time, you kind of knew not only the pieces that would go into a good State of the School presentation, but also how to get the information for that. And people who were new or newish, right? People who hadn't been around a long time, they needed help visualizing what that entailed, because the final product, even if somebody just looked at somebody else's final product, like send me yours, not knowing what went into that was a problem that would cause them the next year to have the same problem. You know what I'm saying? And so Tommy has brought up before, the developing your stump speech, right? So one of the pieces of advice that I have given to people who are becoming new administrators is you're taking over at a place that has, developed a culture that is whatever that culture is. But you, as the person coming in, have some things that are important to you that you need to communicate to people so that when later on, it's different than what they've been used to. Um, they will have known right from the beginning what is important to you. And so developing your stump speech, is a means of communicating with other people about things that are important to you. And so that particular project is something that somebody might not just know, like you were talking about before, John. People, um, they don't just know, like you were talking about the secondary principals. They're put into a position and they're expected to just know. But this is something that you have to overtly and consciously and purposefully work on so that it saves you problems later. And so the project would be, what goes into developing that, your stump speech. How do you um, crystallize in your mind what are a couple of important things that you want to communicate to people so that they know who you are and what your expectations will be, and then how to roll that
And
out for people.
I live and breathe systems. That's just who I am. I'll, whether it be in my personal life or professional life, if something isn't going right, I look at a system and what is setting up that needs to be fixed. And so what I would work with principals on and is help them understand you set up systems and you monitor systems so you don't have to micromanage your people. One great example or easy to understand example is data. You know you're going to give these assessments throughout the year, get them on the calendar. Okay. So you're going to get data from those assessments. So you put on the calendar when you're going to analyze that data. So that'd be another day. And then how are you going to communicate that data? And then what adjustments are you going to make? So to me, that is a system that you just follow time after time after time, and then communication, and then discipline, and then your t-test observations. To me, you systemize all of them, automate maybe 90% of your year, so you just work your systems. And if something's not working, you go back to, what do I need to adjust? To me, like Marty's, after 17 years, that's the way I work it. You find a brand new principal, they're like, what's a system, So I think this whole project will be so beneficial to so many new principals that I'm excited about building the content for it.
Yeah, one thing that, I mean, you think so, you hear Marty talk and then you hear John talking, you see that they're different, right? They had a different approach, possibly, but you can see the flavor, right? There's a flavor behind and their culture that they built. And I, as a company, we don't have content partners. We don't have content experts in our company that are building this content. We go find people like Marty and John that have these different flavors, they're looking at the same problem from a slightly different perspective. And what's important about that is that in this particular product and service that we're offering, the principal, so if there's a topic, whatever the topic is, there's going to be 3 or 4 courses from different people that they'll take to start with. They'll find people that they really gravitate to. So that person might be the one that they look for to be a coach or to be a mentor. Like, there's just a natural, organic connection. But a lot of times what happens is you get to see just one person talking about one thing from one perspective, and it a lot of times then you try to mold, like if I had to mold my personality into, or my the way I do things into something that just doesn't fit, it makes it really challenging. But in this case, you can find the ones that you can really gravitate to and go with. So I just love, that's so exciting to me, because Marty and John, they're different people, they have different experiences, and I want to know, how do you do something? How do you do something? And John, Marty, how do you do it? John, how did you do it? And it's, there's nothing right or wrong about it, or, I mean, there's not like, it's just, I like this one better, right? And we'll go for it. So that's one of the things. The other thing I think that's important is that the program, what it'll have is we have 2 approaches, right? One is for newer or even struggling, or needing to develop administrators. So there's like a 1-year pathway there's a principal 1, and then the topics go deeper and go bigger with principal 2, right? We also have an AP 1 and AP 2, and then aspiring leader 1 and aspiring leader 2. So that's one approach. And what's interesting about it is that in some cases, the projects for like an AP and a principal will be different because they're different roles. But sometimes, like for culture, like assessing your culture, they will be aligned so that they're having the same course, they're learning the same language, the same they have the same definitions and words that they're using. And then to accomplish that project, the principal has a role in accomplishing that project, but so does the AP. The AP has a different role, and they can work together on projects, and they just will have that common language, and that the outcome will be the same. So we're aligning all of those together. But then the other approach that we have is, what about those principals that have a lot of experience, but they just have some key areas that they need to develop? So what we're once we launch this, then we're going to start developing, and we don't know what we're going to call it yet. They're going to be like badges or maybe micro-credentials or something, but it'll be on a specific topic, and it'll just go real deep. So let's say we're talking about school systems or school systems. Well, John might be the guy to build 5 or 6 hours of training that goes really in depth on systems. He might take one system and dive into it, take another system and dive into it. And then from there's virtual peer network conversations, and there's a project that comes out of it along with some mentoring. So somebody can just say, I want that whole in-depth topic. I want to go deep on that topic. And so there will be topics for discipline, for culture, for all of those things. So they can take one or so somebody finishing principle 1 and 2 can then go and do,
and I'll do that content right
the
there.
ones that they feel
That
like they
sounds
want
great.
to go deeper on.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll start working on it tomorrow.
John, I'll sign. You're signed up already.
What are some other things that you would just like our audience to know about this specific project? We're coming up on our time here. But before we do that, what are some things some other pieces that you feel like make this really special that you want to make sure our audience is aware of?
Well, I can tell you that from having been part of the process,
Mm-hmm.
the intent is to create successful people who can lead successful schools, to be successful for teachers and students and communities. And I think that basis is such a strong and necessary piece of what the project entails. It is so focused on the participant's success that it's inevitable that people will become stronger and better at what they do.
Passionate may not even be strong enough word, but being at a school that's 10% eco-dis and a school that's 95% eco-dis, I realize how much the building leadership matters in helping those students grow. Bilingual to monolingual, affluent to really impoverished kids, they need a strong leader. And so anything I can do, either individually or with a project like this, I'm in, because they need it.
I just to piggyback on that. I saw some data on I think it was in the Wallace Foundation report that talks about the difference between a school having the difference on student achievement between having a good leader, and it wasn't even a great leader. It was just a good leader to somebody that's below, not so good leader. I should say. The difference is, like in math, is 3 months of learning. 3 months. It's I guess that would be a third of learning. That's the difference between having a good leader and a poor leader. In reading, it's also about 3 months. I think I'm probably rounding up a little bit. I think it's like 2.7 months for math and 2.9 months for reading. That's such an enormous difference, because then you start to think about those kids when they go to the next grade level. Now they're you just compound it as you keep going on. So building really great leaders is such an important thing. I mean, I'm stumbling on all these reports and stuff, and I'm just getting really excited about it. So, yeah. One thing I wanted to also say is that there are some school districts that are doing probably doing some decent jobs in developing their leaders, and they if all they wanted was, we just need good PD, they can just buy the PD portion and just use it in their current system, right? And if they wanted the PD and the virtual peer networking, and then they do everything else, they can do that as well. I mean, there's different ways to chew on this, and it's not like a one size fits all. We know that there's a lot of amazing work happening, and we just want to have these pieces that can plug into what they're doing to just make them better, right? And it also takes a load off of them. Who you can't find an educator that doesn't have a full plate, and so if we can help make that better and easier, then we'd love to do that.
Awesome. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, any last thoughts or comments?
I'll say one more thing.
Please.
Sorry.
It's okay.
I mentioned that we don't have the content experts, and it's not like we are building our own content. We're partnering with other experts that have gone from, they've retired usually. Sometimes they haven't. Some of the guys are still, active in schools or actively administrating schools. But they're starting consulting businesses. They're thinking about their future. And, when we partner with them, we're not, we don't want them, and our model is so that they don't think, whatever you're doing will take business away from me. We're wanting to build it in a way that we're aligning ourselves with all of these partners to help them build their consulting businesses. And we're finding these great consultants. So why not? I mean, why not put wind in their sails, and then with their work, they're putting wind in our sails, and who wins? Everybody wins, right? The principals are winning, the schools are winning, parents are winning, kids are winning. And so that's pretty exciting.
And it just reminds me of how RL got started. KCAR was out in Del City, a very rural, in the middle of nowhere kind of district, and wanted to connect her people with the presenters that would never come to Del City, or Del City couldn't afford to bring them in, and building that bridge between these fantastic experts and the people that need that information is still what we're doing, and is still a part of our mission, because we want to serve these people in those places that need it. And I'm just so excited how much more of that we're going to be able to do with the work that you guys are doing on this project. Any other last thoughts before we go today, guys?
Well, if I hadn't said it enough, John and Marty, it's just an honor to be working with you guys.
Yep.
So much.
Well, thank you. Feelings mutual for sure.
Well, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you taking the time
guys.
to do this and go through this a little bit.
Thanks, Beth.
Y'all have a great rest of your day. Wasn't that incredible? Like I said, I'm so excited for this project to get underway. If you have questions, if you'd like more information, if you're hearing this and thinking, wow, I want in on that, please visit responsivelearning.com and you can find more information there. We really can't wait to launch this and get it up and running, and build this community of administrators that are bent on helping each other and building community and skill building and all that good stuff that we know is so necessary, but often don't know how to make it happen. As always, this episode is produced by Erwin Solbach, and all of our design and logo work is from Alana Kanoy at Steel Consulting. This podcast, along with our School Leadership Academy, is a labor of so much love from me and the other folks at Responsive Learning. I hope y'all have a great rest of your day.